From shocking confessions to unexpected verdicts, the courtroom has witnessed some of the most gripping and emotionally charged moments in history. Whether you're a law enthusiast or simply curious about the inner workings of the justice system, this video will take you on a thrilling journey through some of the most memorable and dramatic events that have ever taken place in the courtroom. So sit back, relax, and get ready to witness the most intense moments that have ever occurred in a courtroom. Number 1. The O.J. Simpson trial of 1995 is perhaps one of the most well-known and dramatic trials in modern history. O.J. Simpson was a professional football player and actor who was accused of murdering his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. The trial was highly publicized and became a media circus, with live broadcasts of the trial regularly appearing on television. The trial was also significant because it highlighted issues of race and police brutality, as Simpson's defense team claimed that he was being framed by a corrupt police force. Throughout the trial, there were several dramatic moments, including the infamous glove demonstration in which Simpson struggled to put on a bloody glove found at the crime scene. The trial also saw testimony from several high-profile witnesses, including Simpson's ex-girlfriend, who testified that he had a history of domestic violence. In the end, Simpson was acquitted of the murder charges, which further divided the nation and sparked intense debate and controversy. The trial's dramatic and high-profile nature had a significant impact on the public's perception of the justice system and the role of media in trials. Number 2. The Casey Anthony trial in 2011 was a highly publicized legal case that captivated the nation's attention. Casey Anthony was a young mother from Florida who was accused of murdering her 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee Anthony. The case gained national media attention due to the mysterious circumstances surrounding the young girl's death and the conflicting stories and evidence presented by the defendant. Throughout the trial, prosecutors argued that Casey Anthony had intentionally killed her daughter, while the defense claimed that the toddler had accidentally drowned in the family pool and that Casey had attempted to cover it up. The trial lasted for several months and featured dramatic testimonies from witnesses, including Casey's parents and friends. The case was highly controversial and polarizing, with many people following the trial closely and passionately debating the verdict. In the end, Casey Anthony was found not guilty of murder, but was convicted on 4 counts of providing false information to the police. The verdict was met with outrage by some and relief by others, further fueling the already heated debate surrounding the case. Number 3. The Jodi Arias trial in 2013 was a highly publicized case that gripped the nation due to its graphic and disturbing nature. Arias was accused of murdering her ex-boyfriend, Travis Alexander, in a brutal manner, and the trial revealed numerous shocking details about their relationship and the events leading up to the murder. During the trial, prosecutors painted Arias as a jealous and vindictive ex-girlfriend who had become obsessed with Alexander and eventually killed him in a fit of rage. Arias, however, claimed that she had killed Alexander in self-defense after he attacked her. Throughout the trial, Arias's demeanor was noted for its cool and composed nature, despite the gruesome details being discussed in court. She appeared to remain calm and collected, often taking notes and occasionally smiling or laughing during testimony. The trial lasted for months and was watched by millions of people around the world. In the end, Arias was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Jodi Arias trial remains one of the most dramatic and unforgettable trials in recent history. Number 4. The Boston Marathon bombing trial in 2015 was a highly publicized and dramatic event that captured the attention of the nation. The bombing, which occurred in April 2013, killed 3 people and injured hundreds more. The trial, which took place over several months, saw the surviving bomber, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, charged with 30 counts related to the bombing and its aftermath. The trial was marked by emotional testimony from victims and their families, as well as graphic evidence of the devastation caused by the bombing. The defense team argued that Tsarnaev was influenced by his older brother, who was killed in a shootout with police, and that he was not responsible for his actions. In the end, Tsarnaev was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to death. The trial sparked debate about the use of the death penalty and the role of the media in covering high-profile trials. It also highlighted the resilience and strength of the Boston community in the face of tragedy. Number 5. The trial of Michael Jackson's personal physician, Conrad Murray, in 2011 was a highly publicized and dramatic event. The trial stemmed from Jackson's death in 2009, which was attributed to an overdose of the powerful anesthetic propofol that Murray had administered to Jackson to help him sleep. During the trial, which lasted 6 weeks, prosecutors presented evidence that Murray had been negligent in administering the drug and had failed to properly monitor Jackson's vital signs. The defense argued that Jackson had administered the drug himself and that Murray had not been aware of the extent of Jackson's drug use. The trial was notable for the high-profile witnesses who testified, including Jackson's former bodyguards, who described the singer's behavior in the days leading up to his death, and medical experts who discussed the effects of propofol. The trial also revealed the extent of Jackson's drug use and his struggles with addiction. In the end, Murray was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. The trial brought renewed attention to the issue of prescription drug abuse and raised questions about the responsibility of medical professionals in monitoring their patients' drug use. Number 6. Ted Bundy was one of the most notorious serial killers in American history, responsible for the deaths of at least 30 young women in the 1970s. During his trial in 1979, Bundy's charm and charisma were on full display, with many observers noting his good looks and apparent intelligence. Bundy often acted as his own attorney, which allowed him to cross-examine witnesses and even address the jury directly. He was able to maintain a veneer of confidence and composure, despite the heinous natures of the crimes he was accused of committing. Bundy's trial was a media sensation, with reporters and spectators flocking to the courtroom to witness the proceedings. The case also marked the beginning of the use of forensic evidence in criminal trials, as prosecutors relied on hair and fiber evidence to link Bundy to the crimes. In the end, Bundy was convicted and sentenced to death, but not before he captivated the nation with his courtroom presence and generated widespread debate about the death penalty and the nature of evil. Number 7. The Rodney King trial in 1992 was a highly dramatic event that deeply divided the nation and led to widespread unrest. Rodney King, a black man, had been beaten by police officers after a high-speed chase, and the incident was caught on video. The trial of the officers charged with King's beating was highly publicized and watched closely by the public, particularly by the black community who saw it as a test of whether the justice system would hold police officers accountable for their actions. The trial ended with the acquittal of the officers, which led to outrage and protest throughout the city. The riots that followed lasted for several days and resulted in numerous deaths, injuries, and widespread property damage. The events of the trial and the subsequent riots brought to the forefront issues of police brutality, racism, and the relationship between law enforcement and the black community. The Rodney King trial remains a significant moment in American history, serving as a stark reminder of the systemic issues that continue to plague the justice system and the ongoing struggle for justice and equality. Number 8. The Amanda Knox trial in Italy in 2009 was a highly publicized case that captivated the world's attention. Knox, an American student studying abroad in Perugia, was accused of murdering her British roommate, Meredith Kirscher, in their shared apartment. The case was filled with twists and turns, including a questionable interrogation of Knox by Italian police and conflicting DNA evidence. Knox was initially convicted of the crime and sentenced to 26 years in prison, but the verdict was later overturned on appeal. She was eventually acquitted in 2015 after spending nearly 4 years in an Italian prison. The case received extensive media coverage and sparked debates about the Italian justice system and the treatment of foreigners in the country. Number 9. Jeffrey Dahmer was a notorious serial killer and cannibal who was arrested in 1991 after one of his victims escaped and alerted the police. His trial in 1992 was widely publicized and drew intense media attention due to the gruesome nature of his crimes. Dahmer was charged with 15 counts of murder and a host of other crimes, including necrophilia, cannibalism, and dismemberment. During the trial, Dahmer's defense team argued that he suffered from a mental illness and was not fully responsible for his actions. However, the prosecution argued that Dahmer was a cold, calculating killer who knew right from wrong. The trial featured graphic details of Dahmer's crimes, including how he lured his victims to his apartment, drugged them, and then strangled them. He would then engage in acts of necrophilia, dismember the bodies, and sometimes even eat the flesh. Despite his defense team's efforts, Dahmer was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was eventually beaten to death by another inmate in 1994. The trial of Jeffrey Dahmer remains one of the most infamous in American history, and his crimes continue to fascinate and horrify people to this day. Number 10. The trial of Timothy McVeigh in 1997 was one of the most dramatic events in American legal history. He was charged with the bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City on April 19, 1995, which resulted in the deaths of 168 people and injured over 680 others. The trial lasted for weeks and featured emotional testimony from survivors and family members of the victims. The prosecution presented a wealth of evidence linking McVeigh to the bombing, including his rental of the Ryder truck used in the attack and his purchase of the materials used to make the bomb. McVeigh's defense team argued that he was not solely responsible for the attack and that there may have been other conspirators involved. The trial also saw several dramatic moments, including the testimony of a survivor who had lost her young children in the bombing and the confrontation between McVeigh and a survivor who lost her husband. He was ultimately found guilty on all 11 counts, including conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction and first-degree murder, and sentenced to death and executed by lethal injection on June 11, 2001. The trial was a reminder of the devastating impact of domestic terrorism and the lengths that law enforcement and the justice system will go to hold perpetrators accountable. It's important to remember that while these events are shocking, they're also rare occurrences. Despite the risks, judges, lawyers, and court personnel continue to work every day to ensure that justice is served. What do you think of our list? Did we miss any notable events? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more information.